Hello, everybody. Hello, masters of your own destiny. Welcome back to my basement. I'm Francisco Suarez, your host, and this is from Suarez Basement. Yes, you are in the right podcast. This is a podcast that we create for everybody out there that is in love with visual storytelling. Yes, I'm in love with visual storytelling. That's where I do this podcast. And I'm in love with education. So that's where I do this podcast. That's the whole point. This is the force. And you, of course, are the force behind. Every time that I know you're listening to us and you send us your comments and, suggestions through our website, fsbasement.com. Well, I get, of course, very excited because that means somebody is listening out there. And that is the important part. For sure. I want to say thank you to WCNY Central New York PBS for the partnership. Is thanks to that partnership and the partnership of Central New York Arts that we can come to you every other week. So WCNY, PBS in Central New York, and Central New York Arts, thank you so much, both of you, for trusting us with this amazing podcast that we produce for everybody out there that, like I say, is in love with visual storytelling. Today, I couldn't be happier. And the reason why is because I'm a huge fan of a show called Fellow Travelers. This is a show that brings us to different times in history, in the American history. And it's a queer show. It's about the love of these two people who cannot love each other. They do love each other, but they cannot have a relationship due to the circumstance of the historical aspect of those moments. I 100% recommend for you to go and watch Fellow Travelers. But the amazing part is that we have one of the main characters for the show, the actor who played one of the main characters. In this case, he played the character of Frankie. Noah Ricketts is in the basement. He is joining us from New York City. I cannot wait to start this conversation with Noah about acting, his career, about Fellow Travelers, about his character of Frankie. You name it. We're going to ask a lot of good questions. And like I always say, hopefully he will also enjoy this conversation as much we will enjoy it, you, the listener, and myself. Thank you for being here. Let's start this new episode from Suarez Basement right away. Here we go. Well, Noah, I want to welcome you to my basement. It's such an excitement time for me because I'm a huge fan of your work. I have been following you, and especially, of course, with Fellow Travelers. But thank you so much for being with us in my basement.
Well, thanks for having me.
So, Noah, I want to ask you a very kind of philosophical question just to start, because this is an educational podcast and we talk about professions. And in this case, you're an actor. And I want to see if you can give me your own definition, very basic, your own definition. What acting is for you? What do you mean to be an actor?
Oh my gosh, it means so many things. But I guess for me, it means creating truth through a character and allowing people to see themselves in the roles that you play. I think that acting is... I think people think so much of acting as lying or deceiving, but I actually think it's quite the opposite. It's the process of revealing truth and heart and the emotional underlayer of a character that's unlike yourself.
Wow, that is a really good definition. And you mentioned the word through many times in the process. And I do, listen, I'm not an actor, and I'm really bad. I try and it's not for me. So I can see what you say in the sense that I believe that when I see good acting is when you can see the person, the real person, but at the same time, that person involved into this character. And that is very hard. How do you accomplish that process of true when you say, okay, this is me as Noah, but this is the character that I want to play? What is your process of getting into character?
I think it starts with a deep understanding of myself. So, the insecurities, the flaws, the good things, the bad things, everything about me that I have to walk through the world with and own. And then I have to look at this character that exists in the world, and I have to basically compare and contrast the ways they line up. And sometimes they'll really line up, and other times there'll be some discrepancies. And so for me, when I find a discrepancy and this is how I am in the world and this is what the character is, I have to do the deep dive to understand why that person does what they does or how they move through the world, why that exists. And so doing that work of kind of melding these two ideas that they become one kind of allows you to see the front character, but also the person behind it. So I think it's kind of like, the best words I can describe is like a compare and contrast, like figuring out the ways you are alike and the ways you are different and accepting those differences and figuring out how to get in there.
Mm-hmm. It occurred to me just listen to you that you as Noah and you as an actor go to process that not many people goes through. So it's almost like you are a therapist and a psychology, even when that's not your profession. So and I love it, right? I mean, you have to have that understanding of the world in order to really be a good actor and get into those characters. What happened when you get a character that have nothing to do with you? Like, I just very curious because we're going to talk about Frankie, of course. Yeah. But what happened when you suddenly, this is where you've been cast off, but it's nothing to do with Noah?
I actually think sometimes those are the most fun because like, I feel like everyone's got the self that they present to the world. And then the flip side of the self, they've got the completely opposite version that probably only exists in your basement. Right. And so sometimes I love the characters that are so out there because it is like a beautiful challenge to ask the question why. And, if I get cast as a murderer or a serial killer, my job is not to judge the person. My job is to figure out why they do what they do. And so even if I can like find an ounce of that or compare it to my life, okay, maybe they do it because of this. I feel like that's the way to get in. And that's what's so rewarding about acting is that you discover so much about the community around you and the world around you just by investigating people and being curious as to why they move through the world the way they do.
Mm-hmm. I know it seems that you are you have to have a very analytic mind. Do you bring that analytic mind into your real world? Like, do acting help you to navigate difficult situations in your own life?
Absolutely. Like, when living, like we just talked about living in New York City, you deal with so many personalities, like things as simple as going to the coffee shop. People have a bad day, and the understanding why they do what they do or understanding why they may have given you a little attitude definitely helps soften the edges of life because you can see behind the persona. You can see through like the facade of things. And that definitely was a gift from acting for sure.
And acting came to you when you were, tell me a little bit about your childhood and when suddenly you realized, I think I could become an actor. That's something that I love. Of course, you have a background in musicals, in Broadway. We also would like to talk about that. But suddenly when Noah realized, this is a career for me.
Okay, so I'm from Kentucky. So like most boys growing up, I had to play sports. Like I played basketball, I was terrible. Baseball, I was even worse. But soccer was the only thing I was like kind of good at. So I did that growing up. And one summer, I ended up breaking my wrist before I could go to like the soccer camp. So they wouldn't take me. So I had to go to the theater camp. I was shuffled off to the theater camp, the one place that would take me. And I like suddenly was in this magical musical theater land where people sang and did scenes and dance. And at first I thought it was so crazy, but then I kind of accepted it and fell in love with the art form of musical theater through just being a kid through that summer. And once I got up on that stage and started singing those songs, it was like there was truly like no turning back. I remember the moment in my life, like the whole car turned around. Yeah, and moved in that direction. And so my itch for acting and theater, I just kept developing and it kept shifting and morphing. Like first I was really into musicals and then I discovered, oh my God, there's also this thing called straight plays that you can do. And then I discovered the movie and TV world. And so it's been really kind of a long, beautiful journey of just discovering that there's so much that you can do within the acting realm.
You remember the first song, the Isaac song that you sing? That song was like, what was it?
Conjunction Junction, what's your function? It's from Schoolhouse Rock. Remember Schoolhouse Rock?
Yeah,
Yeah, they
yeah.
had a little musical, and I played. I think the role was Joe, and I had my cast on my arm singing "Conjunction Junction." What's your function?
That is so awesome.
Yeah,
As that, and the voice came with you, meaning in the sense that one thing is to say, I would like to be in music as my voice is. Well, first, I don't think even if I have a good voice, I don't think I will be able to remember the lyrics. Which is yeah, I would. That's maybe why I cannot be a good actress because I would be like line please every 5 seconds. Um, but the voice came with you. I mean, you have a beautiful voice.
Oh yeah, well don't listen to that. It's early in the morning. But I mean, I guess that was kind of a natural thing. I feel like when you grow up like in the Black community, like this music is so like inherent in Black culture and life. So that we were always singing and singing songs at church or singing songs in the house or and I think that kind of really helped gel like this whole musical theater thing where I learned the craft of acting, but the musical part of me has definitely always been there.
And let's talk about, of course, your character in Frankie in Fellow Travelers. And your character for me is just one of those characters that I feel some kind of jealousy because, and I tell you why. It took me a while for me to come out and to accept who I was and to be okay with who I was. I also know, and my husband and I, we talk about this many times, that we were very lucky to grow up in a very different times where we are able to have a home, a family, and express our love. But Frankie seems to be one of those persons that is ahead of time, right? But tell me a little bit about the character of Frankie, first question. And the second one would be where we're talking about the true Noah and what is on you in Frankie and what is in Frankie on you.
So I think of, a lot of people when they describe Frankie, they say a drag queen first. They say Frankie's a drag queen. I like to think of Frankie as a revolutionary because it's exactly what you mean. Like, I think Frankie is so out and proud and not afraid to be effeminate and honestly gay in the world. And that in itself is its own act of revolution, just existing. And that's what I love so much about the character of Frankie, that even in these time periods where it's so hard, I mean, if he were to even be alive today, it would be a challenge, right? That he decides to put his best foot forward and be himself at all costs. And that's something that, like, I think really resonated with me. I feel like for better or for worse, I am always myself. And I think like that authenticity is something I try to have no matter what I do. And just like Frankie, sometimes it comes at a cost, right? Being called names or, being looked at with disdain or disgust. And you still have to move through the world being like, I don't give a It's so important to be who you are. I mean, if that's at the end of the day, that's all you've got. And that's what I love about the character of Frankie, that, you can put the drag profession aside, you can put that he's a bartender aside, but he really is a revolutionary. And you see that as the series goes on, no spoilers, but you see how he, gives up drag and joins the fight. And what I love about the series is, we as queer people have to thank the Black and brown drag queens, trans women, for our existence today, because they are the reasons we're able to have these pride parades or get married, because they were doing what Frankie did, putting their butts on the line for something greater than themselves. And I just like, one of the things that we're talking about characters and things like that, one of the things that I always take away is like a little gift from whatever character you play. You learn a little more about yourself and you're like, oh, I want to be like that. And I feel like for me and Frankie, it's that I want to move even more authentically through the world, because, you can shift and morph to kind of assimilate to how the world is around you. And a gift that I took from Frankie was I'm going to stop apologizing for whatever I want to do. And I think that's such a beautiful thing.
It is a beautiful thing. And again, it's just, well, I see it in this generation. I know that I want to put myself in the old category, but with my students, I have a lot of Frankies in my classes, which I'm like, yes, girl, you go for it. I just love that you don't need to give me any explanation of, you are so in tune to who you are. Even when you are young and in the process of discovering your full potential, this generation, I see a queer generation, and even no queer generation, where they are very much secure of that process of discovering who they are. And I always say to my students, the only responsibility that you have in life is with yourself and to the process of going to a point where you know who you are. We're not talking about queer, we're not talking about straight, we're not talking, it's about who is this person. What are your moral values, if you want to? What is the things that you're not going to put in discussion, right? And that is the most powerful thing that you can discover, because I think when you discover that, the rest is piece of cake.
Yeah.
But I see this generation be a little more like Frankie, and I love it.
And you know what I love what you just said too, is like there's this whole younger kind of gay queer generation, and I feel like this series is a lens into their history that they never get to see. You know, like I had to go do the work to figure out gay history, you know, though it's not something that's taught in school or given outright. You know, you learn, so, you know, America's really good at picking and choosing what they want to tell. And that's why I love this series. And I hope that the younger generation watches it, because it is so important to go back to the 50s and learn how you got here today. Like why you're able to move through the world the way you are today. And I love that.
No, and it's so scary. I mean, I do have to say, when we watch the show, it's very scary to think that humans can be so oppressive to other humans. It's repeating history over and over and over again. But yeah, it's very scary. It's like, that's where it give me so much appreciation, the fact that I can be authentically myself, even when, like I say, the history repeat himself. We are in times where we feel like it's this need of going back to that place. And it's just scary.
It is scary. And, you know, when we were starting to film this series, you know, some of women's rights have been taken away, you know, in regards to abortion laws. And we were like, oh shit, we're next. I mean, that's truly what we thought while filming. So it's such a mind screwed up in your mind to think that I'm filming this series about, you know, the McCarthy era and the Lavender Scare and all this stuff that's happening to queer people. And I'm next here in 2023, 24, you know, like, so I think these pieces are so important because they really shine a light on what happened. And I think if we don't do that, it's bound to happen again, you know?
And I want to ask you this question that I always ask, because I teach script writing for television, and I always say to my students, okay, tell me what your story is about, and they describe what it's about, and I don't know, an alien that comes, blah, 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 I say. And then my second question normally is, well, tell me really, what is really the story about? Like, what is there? So for fellow travelers, of course, we follow this love story. Some of the scenes are really good, not to mention. And suddenly, you know, you start thinking, okay, I understand the plot, the concept, but what is this really about? What is fellow travelers in your mind? And especially you being part of the cast, what is about?
You know, to me, when I watch fellow travelers, I think it's people trying to love themselves and love each other in a world that's destined to hate them. And it's this push and pull of loving someone else while knowing that people around you have so much hate for who you are as a person. And so, you know, if you remove all of, you know, the backdrop of McCarthy era and all the stuff, it really is an epic love story. You know, the gay parts are just the gay parts, but it's two people or four people or five people trying to figure out how they can love each other and love themselves in this world. And some people go about it in very manipulative ways. Some people go about it in very authentic ways. Some people push and pull and go between the two. But I think at the end of the day, it really is an epic love story that spans many decades, as we know really exist in the world. And I think as queer people, we have no map to figure out life and love for ourselves. We have to figure it out. And that's why these things span so long. Like I always say, like, the straights have it mapped out. You're going to get married. You're going to have a kid, buy the house, the thing. And as queer people, you can see even in this, it's this push and pull of trying to live between two worlds, which is very real for most people.
It is. And I think, again, your character and your relationship with your partner is there are very complicated characters, especially your partner in the TV show, because again, I think we all were there. I identify with him so much because it's this, as a Latino coming from a very macho culture, very Catholic. It's like this struggle, but that's not me. But what it means to be me, and what it means to be gay, and it's a very complicated concept. And I think your character, Frankie, it really teach him. It was his mentor to be in life, to say no, but this is how you should be living your life.
Yeah, he does. And I can't tell you, like, that is so real, especially in the gay community, where you fall in love with someone who's not fully accepting in themselves, and you receive so much of the hatred that their own self-hatred, like in the backlash of things. And it's true. The push and pull between the worlds is so exhausting. And I love that in Fellow Travelers, they acknowledge that you can have two men of color who are completely different, And I think sometimes in television and film, we feel so, if you get one queer character, you're like, thank God. So to have them all be an array of colors, an array of experiences, and really go through that, exactly like you said, like the nuanced, deep work of these characters, I think is so special.
I love it. Congrats. And tell me a little bit, of course, your people always like to know a little bit behind the scene. Where Fellow Travelers were filmed? Do you guys use New York or Vancouver? Where were you filming, and how was this moving in different eras?
Okay, so we filmed in Toronto. So literally like 99% of that is filmed in Toronto, except for one scene. I think they moved to Virginia for a day and they came back because they couldn't get the DC just right. And and then between the decades, it was very hard because we filmed everything out of order. And sometimes because of our schedules, we were dealing with multiple schedules. We had two directors at once, and we were crossing over between decades in the same day. So, sometimes we'd be like, what year is it? Like, where, So I ended up doing I literally did like a map, and I was like, okay, this is 1952 and this is 68. And I was like drawing as like a visual perspective of where I'm at. Otherwise it would be lost in the ether. And so it was very, very challenging. And sometimes you'd only know just by, if it was the 70s, if someone had a mustache, an extra walk by, you're like, oh yeah, okay, here we are today. So, flipping between the periods and like knowing what you're doing with your body and your voice at that time, that was a big, big challenge for all involved.
Wow, that is really fascinating. It's almost like time travel. It's like,
it was. And I actually did like drag time travel. Some days I would start in drag, get out of drag and do my kind of boy look, and then get back into drag in a different era. So it was a whirlwind.
That's incredible. Was long hours of work? Like you guys were filming until late? How long it took to do the entire show, you would say?
We filmed for 6 months, and we were on for most of it. That schedule was jam-packed. And we had long days because, as you see, it's so stunning, like beautifully shot, that it feels more like a movie in some realms. So those sets were so epic, and the scale of the extras was so epic. And as we went on, Showtime would get some of the daily clips that we'd send, and they started to be even more behind the project. So they would send more money to pad out the project, and then one day you show up and there's 400 extras, So it became even more grand as people realized that we were doing this very, very special piece, which was very great.
It's very excited, and it's a very, very special piece. And I mean, some of the sets are like that. The club where you perform, it's just stunning. It's just so beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, that club, I loved it. And I walked in, it's on a soundstage and it looks so incredibly beautiful. It's huge, by the way. And there's staircases and there's a real grand piano and beautiful art murals. And I was like, can we please just move this to Manhattan?
To Manhattan. And you can call it Fellow Travelers. It's a good name for a bar.
I think it is. I think we're onto something.
Mm-hmm. And what is next for you, Noah? What is cooking in the oven?
I don't know if I'm allowed to say, but I will say, I got some TV things coming out. Oh my God, I love that. We got some little movie things coming out. I did a pre-Broadway show of The Great Gatsby. I played Nick Carraway in The Great Gatsby just recently, and that Broadway show is making its way to New York. I can't say anything official. Maybe it's in the spring. Who knows? But
So you're busy.
Yeah, I got some stuff cooking on the burner. And then, it's when the new year comes, all, things drop out of the sky. So I would say keep your eyes on the Instagram, and I'll tell the world when I actually can tell the world.
That's so exciting. Listen, I don't have more words than tell you that not only you are a great actor, it seems to me, I don't know you that well, that you are a fantastic human being. And that the sky is the limit. I think you are just crafting what is going to be your career and your personal life, and I cannot wait to see what the future has for you.
Oh my God, thank you, and thanks for all you do in teaching as well. We really appreciate you.
No, it's that's what I love, right? I mean, I think I'm trying to discover the next Noah. I always say, I joke to my students, I say, listen, as long you mention me when you win that Grammy or Oscar or whatever you're going to win, you just say, the short guy with the funny accent. Thank you.
That's amazing.
I cannot wait to see what is coming next. Please, to all our audience, go and check it out, Fellow Travelers. No matter if you're queer, no queer audience, this is about an amazing, well-produced show, full of love, full of very integrated characters, and amazing acting. So I recommend it 100% to you go and see it. So Fellow Travelers, and Noah, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to have you in our basement, or in my basement indeed.
Thank you. I'll come back anytime. Thank you so much.